wow, what do you know? It's time for the Pocket Knife Show. Hey, it's Mike on the mic again for another episode of the Pocket Knife Podcast. Did your family have an odd phrase you said all the time that would make little or no sense to anyone outside the clan? The unusual phrase my kids grew up with came from my wife's side of the family. It couldn't have come from my side because it's a Kirundi phrase which came to the U.S. on the lips of a missionary family who spent dozens of years in Burundi, Africa. The expression our family uses because of our link to Burundi is Nikadzikawe. Probably no one listening today has ever heard those words unless they've slipped from my tongue when you've been nearby. What does Nikadzikawe mean? It means it's your job or it's your thing to do. We use this saying when someone asks us to do something they're supposed to do or something we don't want to do. A typical conversation might sound something like this. Would you please take out the trash? Nikadzikawe. Sometimes, mixing languages strangely, we reply, it's your kadzi, or that's not my kadzi. Jesus in Matthew 7 describes some tasks you and I might do and pinpoints whose kadzi they are. Quite often the things he talks about are not my kadzi, not your kadzi. They are kadzis best left to God. So, whose kadzi becomes the question. Now, before I lose you all, I'll stop using that word. It's my job to guide you, not confuse you. Using kadzi over and over might lead to misunderstanding, so I'll use English when talking about whose job Jesus says things are from here on out. So let's read the very first words of Matthew 7. These are probably familiar words to you. They're often quoted in context and out of context. In context is what we're going for, so let me read more than just one verse. Let me read for you the first 5 verses of Matthew 7. Do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Judging others. Whose job is it? Not yours. Not mine. That doesn't mean we don't do it. We do, but it's not our job. Not at all. Do you know who's going to heaven and who's going to hell? No, you do not. Can I tell by looking at a bunch of people who's damned and who's blessed? Nope. You and I, and every other human being, are at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to judging. We do not know enough. All we know is what we see. We don't know what's in a person's heart. We don't know their desires, their struggles, their motives. We know what they look like and see what they do. Because we're led by our eyes in all things, we're often fooled by well-dressed liars. Because we believe what we see, we sometimes ignore shabbily clad sages who speak the truth. Whose job is it to judge then? Who's actually good at it? Jesus doesn't tell us specifically here, but you know, I think you know who it is. Who is the only one who knows enough to rightly evaluate a person? It's God. It is only God. We would do well to obey Jesus and refrain from all judgment. In the end, all our assessing of others will do is get us in trouble. You did notice what Jesus said in verse 2, didn't you? In the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Those are scary words. I have judged others in ways I do not want to be judged. Have you done the same? If God doesn't have mercy on us, we are in deep, 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 deep doo-doo. God, help us to let you do your job and stick with what you've given us to do. And what is that task that we've been assigned? Personal plank removal. That's your job, my job. Instead of watching out for another's missteps, we're to watch our own steps. Does that mean we can't help a brother who's struggling to overcome sin? No, it simply means we start with our own faults. We examine our own hearts, asking God to show us the truth we've hidden from ourselves. There's a prayer at the end of Psalm 139 that I remind myself of regularly. It's a prayer that ought to be on my mind and coming from my lips more often than it is. Listen to what King David says to God in Psalm 139, 23 and 24. Search me, God, And know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Is there any better prayer for those who want to deal with the planks jutting out of their eyes? I can't think of any more appropriate way to approach God for help in seeing my own faults. I will never be able to help a fellow struggler if I don't face my own shortcomings. Gently reproving another without a trace of judgment requires the humility that comes from knowing my sins. My first job, take care of the plank in my own eye. My second job, help my sister remove the speck from her eye. Not my job, judging others. Oh no, it's sad I know we've come to the end of the show. See you next time.